Moving on to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So to be clear, right off the top, I'm picking Denver to win the title, but this isn't like a Denver with Oklahoma City way down here. The gap is very small to me. If anything, I'd say they're on the same tier. I just would pick Denver to beat Oklahoma City in a series. Quick offseason recap. They're basically the same team, plus Nikola Topic is coming back from an injury that caused him to miss all of last year. I actually think Topic could end up having like a decent-sized role on this team because as Indiana kind of exposed last year, they do have a little bit of a ball handling deficit. And I think they could use someone to help them run their offense for stretches, help with some advantage creation, especially when Shai's off the floor. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays quite a bit this year. The story of the Thunder is going to be internal improvement in this season. It's been an arms race in the Western Conference all summer. The Nuggets added a bunch of talent. We just covered that. The Lakers are getting a better version of Luka and a massive upgrade at center. The Rockets, obviously they lose Fred VanVleet, but if they can pull off a trade for a guard, they'll be a top-tier contender. The Clippers added a bunch of depth. We covered that the other day. The Warriors, if they get Horford, will be better. We covered that the other day. The Mavs will be a pain in the ass after being out of the equation last year. The Spurs will likely join the mix. And the Thunder, rightfully, for the record, they stood pat. So if they're going to keep up, they need internal improvements. Last year's Thunder would lose to this year's Nuggets, in my opinion. I mean, hell, last year's Thunder damn near lost to last year's Nuggets, right? So what does that internal improvement look like for Oklahoma City to maintain the gap between them and the rest of the league as they get better around them? First and foremost, Shai's game management. Shai had a remarkable regular season statistically, but his efficiency plummeted in the postseason. And I thought his inconsistent game management was a big part of how they had such an up and down postseason run. Some nights he'd come out and do a great job of setting up his teammates and looking for advantages, picking his spots as a scorer and keeping everybody in rhythm. And then other nights he'd come out gunning and he'd take the team out of rhythm. The stats here were insane. When the Thunder won in the postseason, they had a 120 offensive rating. When they lost in the postseason, they had a 103 offensive rating. Out of the 16 playoff teams, if you took all their offensive ratings just in losses, that ranked 11th out of the 16 teams. In short, their offense was awesome when they won and legitimately terrible when they lost. Now, to Shai's credit, every time the shit hit the fan and the Thunder found themselves in like a must-win situation, I thought he managed those games extremely well, and he got the job done. That's the beauty of everything that happened with the Thunder last year. In many ways, they showed the warts of their youth and won anyway. And that's what's scary about the potential future. Outside of Game 4 of the Finals. Game 4 of the Finals was the one time I thought Shai kind of had a bad floor game in a big spot. But even then, he came alive down the stretch in the final minutes, made the big plays, got the win that they needed. But this year, in all likelihood, the margin for error will be smaller. The top 6 teams in the West are just better than they were last year. So Shai becoming a more consistent game manager would go a long way towards them helping avoid an upset. J-Dub's overall development. J-Dub was incredible in this playoff run. And for that reason, he ended up cracking my top 20 players in our player rankings this year. But he was inconsistent as well, as many young players are. Like, when J-Dub scored at least 18 points, the Thunder went 14-2. When he failed to score 18 points, the Thunder went 2-5. The biggest piece was mostly his three-point shooting. He was 5 for 34 from 3 in those 7 games where he failed to get to 18 points. He did really, it seemed like right towards the end of the Nuggets series, it like clicked for him. You could tell he like realized that no one can stop him from getting to the rim. It felt like one of the big aha moments for him in his career. He's just starting to realize that he's one of the most gifted basket attackers in the NBA. We went over some of the stats in our player rankings video that showed he's already one of the most gifted drivers of the basketball in the entire league. But if he can balance that out with a reliable three-point shot, that's where he's going to become a very dependable night-to-night player. And again, when I'm talking about this, and I'm about to talk about Chet in a second, I'm not trying to be super critical of these guys. I'm pointing this stuff out as a reason to get excited. These guys, how many teams, you know how many fans around the league are looking at their team and they're like, we kind of are what we are. We just have to hope we have enough pieces. Like Oklahoma City can sit there and go like, I don't know how much better we're going to get this year, but these guys are going to be better. It's very possible that even just over the course of the season, like Sometimes guys take leaps in big spots. Like you could have Chet figure it out and it could all click in a big Western Conference Finals series. That's a potential that this team has that many teams around the league don't have. With Chet, it's his offensive development. I thought Chet was phenomenal on defense in the entire playoff run. His combination of rim protection and his ability to switch out onto guards was a huge part of how Oklahoma City reached the level they reached defensively on their way to get the trophy. But obviously on offense, it was an adventure, right? He had 6 20-point games, but he had 4 single-digit games. And similarly to J-Dub, it was tied to the team's success. When Chet scored at least 13 points, the Thunder were 13-3. When he failed to score 13 points, they were 3-4. Obviously a big part of that offensive rating we talked about in losses. The issues for him showed up in a variety of areas. He was 46% on layups in the playoff run. Obviously a player of his size, he just needs to get better at finishing around the rim through contact. He took 26 off the dribble jump shots and only made 6 of them. So he either needs to massively improve there or kind of trim that fat out of his game. We'll see. It'll probably be a little bit of both. He shot 32% on catch and shoot jumpers, including 32% when he was unguarded. So he's got to be able to knock down open shots. And again, these are not criticisms. You literally just won the title, and Chet is 23 years old. He's going to get way better. And when he does, he's going to be one of the best players in the league. Like I genuinely believe Chet has like Anthony Davis level two-way potential. That's what he's capable of getting to. He's obviously years from that, but he has that capability. And how far he gets in that direction this season is going to be a big part of whether or not they can stiff arm the rest of the Western Conference. And again, like whether it's Chet or it's J-Dub or it's Shai or it's guys like Kason Wallace or whether or not Nikola Topic ends up succeeding in a decent sized role, that will be the difference in whether or not they can stiff arm these teams or not. The West is an absolute beast. The top 6 teams are insane. I found the stat the other day and I found it very interesting. The big reason Oklahoma City got to 68 wins wasn't that they outclassed the West. They only won 3 more games against the West than the Los Angeles Lakers did, led by old man LeBron James. They went 29-1 against the East. That game where Oklahoma City barely lost in Cleveland, that was their only loss against an Eastern Conference team all season. This is not an unbeatable team. As I said, I have them right there with Denver as the best team in the league. And again, all of those teams below, whether it be Houston or the Lakers or Minnesota, Anthony Edwards got his ass kicked last year. You don't think he's coming back with a little bit more of an attitude and a little bit more of a effort to improve in the areas where Shai kicked his ass? We're going to talk about it in a second. The Clippers are a threat. Golden State's a threat. These are all upset threats, right? And then Denver's right there with them. This is not going to be easy for Oklahoma City to repeat. They're going to need that internal improvement. But to make it very clear, if they do get substantial leaps out of Shai, out of J-Dub, out of Chet, they'll kick everyone's ass and they'll hoist the trophy again as the first repeat champion since 2018.